Hi everybody, welcome back to Reading with Leon. We are going to read a cool book called The Tree in the Ancient Forest by Carol Reed Jones and illustrations by Christopher Canyon. This book has a Benjamin Franklin Award. It says, the remarkable webs of plants and animals living around a single old fir tree takes on a life of its own in this stunningly illustrated story. Carol Reed Jones' repetitive, cumulative verse, a poetic technique that children universally love, aptly portrays the amazing ways in which the inhabitants depend on one another for survival. Christopher Canyon's memorable drawings manage to be both magical and true to life, complete with a guide to the forest creatures and their interrelationships. This book is a valuable learning tool as well as fun for kids, and it says it's for 4 to 10-year-olds. I think this book is really good. And it looks like this was one of my brother's books. Now my brother passed away when I was pregnant with Leon. I had forgotten that this was one of his. So won't be donating this. This will stay. There's an autograph of the illustrator. And it is really beautiful. It says, this is the ancient forest. Oh, sorry, there's a little thing before that. It says, in all of nature there is something of the wonderful, by Aristotle. Truly there is something wonderful in every bit of nature. Every animal and plant, no matter how small, even if it is microscopic, is important to nature. The plants and animals in this story depend upon one another for survival. This kind of mutual need is called interdependence. Somewhere near your home is a wild, natural area where the plants and animals all rely upon one another. It may be a woodland or a wetland, a prairie, a desert, a jungle, or even a tundra. Even if the plants and animals living near you are different from those in the story, they all are interdependent in the same kind of ways that the plants and animals in this story are. Walk softly when you go into a wild place. If you must speak, whisper. Look for the birds, insects, and other animals that live there. Sit in one place for a few minutes without speaking or moving. Listen to the many different sounds. Which sounds are made by birds? How many of them are made by insects or larger animals? Can you smell flowers, other plants, even the soil? I love the smell of petrichor, which is wet soil. Is there a breeze that makes grass, leaves, or branches rustle? Do you hear water from a stream? Look closely at the ground. What tiny insects and plants can you find? You'll probably find many more living things than you first imagined. Just as all the plants and animals depend upon one another, we also depend upon all of nature. It is important that we learn to preserve and respect these living things, not only for ourselves, but for our children and grandchildren and all the wonderful creatures who share this planet with us. Okay, so again, this is the ancient forest. This is the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. So beautiful. These are the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. Look at that. So pretty. These are the tiny underground truffles that grow on roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. These are the voles and mice that tunnel and eat the tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. So cute. This is the owl that flies at night that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat the tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. Owls go, hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo. These are the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat the tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots, that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is a hollow tree, home of the sleepy owlets, that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat the tiny underground truffles that grow on roots that draw food from the soil, to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is the woodpecker searching for ants that started the hollow in the tree, home of the sleepy owlets. I didn't miss a page, did I? Nope, okay. Home of the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat the tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is the saucy, chattering squirrel that scolds the woodpecker searching for ants, that started the hollow in the tree, home of the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat the tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is the hungry, stealthy martin that stalks the saucy, chattering squirrel that scolds the woodpecker searching for ants that started the hollow in the tree, home of the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat the tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. That's pretty. These are the fir cones that fall from a branch and startle the hungry, stealthy martin that stalks the saucy, chattering squirrel, that scolds the woodpecker searching for ants, that started the hollow in the tree, home of the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat the tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is the 300-year-old tree that grows the fir cones that fall from a branch and startle the hungry, stealthy martin that stalks the saucy, chattering squirrel, that scolds the woodpecker searching for ants, that started the hollow in the tree, home of the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat the tiny underground truffles that grow on roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. And so it says the characters in the story. Only a few of the plants and animals in an ancient forest were chosen to be characters in this story. There are many, many more. All are interdependent in some way, and each one plays an important role in the health of the forest. A Douglas fir tree can be as old as 1,000 years and as tall as 300 feet. It is home to voles, owls, martins, Douglas squirrels, and flying squirrels. Birds and rodents eat the seeds and the cones. Deers eat the new shoots, and black bears sometimes eat the sap layer under the bark. The roots are very shallow for such a tall tree. Most of the roots lie just 3 feet underground, but spread out from the trunk for many yards. Truffles are only 3/8 to 2 inches in diameter. They are the underground fruits of mycorrhizae. Mycorrhizae are fungi that attach themselves to tree root tips or enter the roots themselves and help the roots use nutrients from the soil. The roots help the mycorrhizae absorb nutrients too. The truffles and tree roots are so necessary to one another that trees without truffles may die. This partnership is a good example of interdependence. Voles and mice eat truffles year-round except in the winter. When they eat the truffle spores seeds are not harmed. Truffle spores in the rodent's droppings are then deposited on the forest floor and grow into more truffles. Every time a mouse or vole eats truffle, it is helping to plant more truffles. Well, that's good. Northern spotted owls eat voles, mice, and flying squirrels. Spotted owls are very trusting and are curious about humans. Other owls that live in the ancient forests are the great horned owl, barred owl, saw-whet owl, pygmy owl, and western screech owl. The spotted owl is an endangered species. It could become extinct. We don't want that. 2 or sometimes 3 owlets are born to a pair of spotted owls every other year. They nest only in ancient forests. The nest hollow was created by a lightning wound to the tree. The tree formed a fire scar, which attracted a wood-boring beetle. Carpenter ants moved in to eat the dead wood, and woodpeckers dug for insects. Spotted owls also nest on platforms created by mistletoe or formed when a storm breaks the crown or top of a tree. A pileated woodpecker helped make the hollow by digging for insects that eat dead wood. These woodpeckers dig their own nest cavities. If the woodpeckers move out, other animals may move in. Douglas squirrels, flying squirrels, martins, bats, tree swallows, or the western screech owl. Douglas squirrels eat truffles and Douglas fir seeds during the day. Another squirrel in the ancient forest is the flying squirrel, which also eats truffles and is active at night. Flying squirrels don't actually fly, but they do jump and glide through the air by using skin flaps along their sides, between their front and back feet. The martin is a shy relative of the weasel. Martins live mostly in the trees and are not often seen by humans. They eat squirrels, rabbits, mice, birds, eggs, berries, seeds from cone-bearing trees, and sometimes honey. Ooh, yummy. The cones from Douglas fir trees have seeds that many animals eat. The seeds are very light. 42,000 seeds weigh only 1 pound. Wow. Vast numbers of them fall from the cones and drift up to 1/4 of a mile from their parent tree in a moderate breeze, spinning and twirling because the small fork-shaped wings on each seed. Each of these seeds has within it the living code that will shape a future forest. And what is an ancient forest? An ancient forest is a natural forest that has been allowed to grow undisturbed for at least 200 years. The trees in an ancient forest may be as old as 1,000 years or even older. The ancient trees in this story is in the Pacific Northwest, but its main characteristics are shared by ancient forests the world over. Ancient forests have large, old-standing trees which shelter or feed nearly all the animals in the forest. Standing dead trees called snags, which are homes to many animals, insects, woodpeckers, swifts, bats, owls, martins, squirrels, and many others. Fallen trees, which provide shelter for animals, food for insects and other animals, and release nutrients into the soil when they decay. Fallen trees collect mosses and lichen and dust decaying leaves, and other organic matter. This material creates a rich soil for tree seedlings and other plants. A decaying falling tree with younger trees growing on top of it is called a nurse tree. That's cool. I didn't know that. A multi-storied, multi-species forest canopy. This means the forest roof has many different levels with many different sizes, ages, and species of trees. These are natural patches of shade and sunlight on the forest floor. By contrast, commercial stands of timber are mostly uniform in species and age and are really over 100 years old. So why are ancient forests important? The ancient forests are critical to animals and to us. Of the animals in the story, the marten, pileated woodpecker, and northern spotted owl are especially dependent on very large old trees. If they do not have ancient forests in which to live, they may become extinct. In addition, we are only now beginning to discover plants and animals that are unique to ancient forests. They may be helpful to us in ways that we do not yet understand. And I think this book was written around 1997 because Chris Canyon's signature says 97. Ancient forests purify the air. A single old Douglas fir tree can have as many as 60 million needles with a total surface area of about 1 acre. These needles are constantly filtering the air, absorbing carbon dioxide, and producing life-giving oxygen. And excessive carbon dioxide is considered to be mainly responsible for the global warming, the greenhouse effect. Ancient forests are irreplaceable. It takes a forest at least 200 years of undisturbed growth even to begin to have the characteristics that make an ancient forest. Cutting down an ancient forest is not like mowing the lawn. Once an ancient forest is cut, we will never see it again. That's sad. Even though over 90% of the ancient forests in America have been cut, we can still save the remaining 10%. We can use wood products wisely, purchasing wood that has not been cut from ancient trees. We can use recycled paper or paper from other vegetables, fibers such as cotton, and we can support laws that will protect other forests. And then we have the stuff about the author. Did I show you? Yeah, that's the part I just read. I hope you guys enjoyed this and learned something like I did. And have an amazing day. Oh, and tell me if you have ever been in an ancient forest. I think it would be so much fun. Bye!